Now repeat after me. Fish. That's weird. Well, actually it's quite logical. GH as in tough, O as in women, TI as in nation. This is just one of many examples of how illogical English pronunciation is. Night has a silent K and a silent GH. Det has a B which does absolutely nothing. Wednesday is spelled Wednesday, which means that there is a whole syllable missing and no one cares about it. Beautiful is so ugly. And my favorite one, kernel. Yeah, that's how you pronounce it. Like corn. It doesn't even have E as the second letter, let alone the R. Which makes you wonder, was there ever a time when these words sounded the way they were written? And the thing is, there was. So what went wrong and how could it get so bad? Let's discuss that. Look at these words: though, through, thought, tough, cough, bough. 6 words, same 4 letters, and 6 different pronunciations. In Old English, that letter combination still didn't sound the same, but it was much more consistent and logical. For instance, the word thorough sounded like thorough. You may notice this sound. It appears in all these words and it sounds like h. It's now completely gone. It only survived in borrowed words like bough or loch, which most English speakers just pronounce as bach and loch. At some point, people just stopped making that sound. Was it too hard to pronounce? Well, in part, yes. Consonants usually come in voiced, voiceless pairs. Take the sound p and b. Same mouth position for both. The only difference is whether you buzz your vocal cords or not. These sounds seem to only survive in pairs, and in English, h had no partner. It also only appeared in one narrow corner of the language, that is, after vowels before the letter T or at the end of the word. But English speakers lived with that for centuries. They didn't seem to mind. Who did mind, though, were the French. The French-speaking Normans, that is. In 1066, they sailed their ships to England and invaded it. Within 20 years, they had killed or exiled virtually every Anglo-Saxon noble. They were a tiny group, maybe 10 to 20,000 against 2 million English speakers, but they took everything at the top, so who cares how many people you have? The majority of them did not speak any English. Actually, from this point on, English was simply ignored on the high level. For the next 300 years, England became heavily trilingual. French for the king, Latin for God, and English for whoever's left. English wasn't even a written language anymore. The people who could write it were replaced, and no one trained successors. Then Normandy was lost to France in 1204, and the Norman elite in London suddenly became English again. From that point on, English started gradually returning to being used in official writing. But in the 13th, 14th centuries, when it finally came back into writing, it looked more like if Old English and French had a child. The scribes that had been trained in French completely respelled English. Some respellings were purely visual. For instance, in the old days, love would be love. Some would be spelled as some, and come, well, moving on. Right now, we're around year 1400, and this is the point where things start to get nasty. Probably the biggest, most important thing. The Great Vowel Shift. There's this thunderstorm outside, so we got blackout, but let's keep going. This is the one period that changed English sounds the most. How people spoke before it and after it are 2 completely different worlds. It ran for around 300 years, from roughly 1400 to 1700. So where your tongue sits in your mouth decides which sound comes out. For instance, when you pronounce the sound ah, your tongue position is very low. And when you say e or oo, it's very high. So every sound moved up 1 or 2 steps. Goss became goose and mat became meat. Oh, we got light again. But why did it happen? Nobody fully knows, but here's the leading suspect. In the 14th century, the Black Death hit Europe and killed around 1/3 to 1/2 of its population. The cities lacked workers, and so people started moving from the rural areas to the big cities like London because they paid better there. Also, before the Black Death, people were tied to their landlords, and after the plague, the system broke down. So all these different dialects crashed into each other in the cities, and the vowels never recovered. And remember our sound h. This is exactly what it entered its dying stage too. Over the next 150 years, the sound met 2 different fates. Fate 1, it vanished and the vowels stretched to fill the gap. These are your night, light, sight, though, through. And fate 2, it turned into f. These are your cough, laugh, rough, enough. So speech is developing rapidly, but here's the problem. The writing is about to stop. English was coming back, but every region wrote it completely differently. Every cleric spelled words in the official documentation their own way. So in the 1420s, the king pushed English into all the official paperwork, and the chancery clerks made the writing uniform. Funny enough, at this exact moment, h in words like night and through was dying, but the clerks kept the letters anyway, and thus cemented them for centuries. Then, if this wasn't enough, in 1476, the first printing press appears in Westminster. is the only press in England, so whatever it prints is how you write. Before, everyone used to write however they wanted, but now everyone reads the same printed spelling, so everyone starts copying it. So here's the disaster. The speech kept developing rapidly for another 200 years, but the writing, frozen by the clerks and the press, it stayed the same. So the language progresses, and who do you think comes next? The scholars of the 16th century. I hate these guys. I physically hate them. They decided English words were not classy enough and they should look more like Latin, so they started adding silent letters into the words. This is where you get weirdos like that, doubt, or receipt, and a lot of those letters were just fake. They were not based on the right etymology. Take island. A scholar decided it must come from the Latin insula, so he put an S in there. It doesn't come from insula. It's an old English word that never had an S in its life. But the S stayed, and kids today lose points on spelling tests because of one guy's mistake 500 years ago. So yeah, they botched the language pretty badly. Okay, next one. When I first found out about spelling bees as a kid, I thought that I would be great at that because in Ukrainian, in fact in the majority of languages, you write words exactly the way you say them, but English is a very complex beast, so we should probably cut them some slack. When you see a little kid spell the word Scherenschnitt or Sexidanium, you root for them. You root for them because that kid is single-handedly answering for 1,000 years of invasions, lazy scribes, and Flemish typesetters, none of whom will be there when she loses. The last thing I want to talk about is nobody's in charge of English. France has the Académie Française, which is 40 scholars deciding on what's correct French and what's not, since 1635. Spain has the Real Academia Española, 1713. Germany was a bit late. They did a government spelling reform in 1996, but someone is always responsible. English? Nothing. They tried it once, a proposal for an English academy in 1712, and it failed. So nobody can fix the OUGH, because fixing it requires the power to declare a new spelling correct, and no one is brave enough to do that. Oh, and remember Colonel? English took the word twice, from the Italian escolonello and from French escoronel. People used both for a while. But in the end, everyone kept writing the Italian way, but kept saying the French way. Two words got glued into one, and nobody ever fixed it because, again, there is no one to fix it. And that's the story. The GH in night is the sound people just stopped making. The B in dead, the scholar just added it to look smart. The S in island is the same guy, just this time he was wrong. Every weird spelling is just something that happened to English at some point and just stayed there forever. So one last time, repeat after me. Fish.